Hi guys. So today we're here for another cooking demo. So I know we as the dietitians here at UPMC, we are doing some cooking demos for the next 2 months. So my name is Allison White. I am an outpatient dietitian at Western Psychiatric Hospital. I actually specifically work with eating disorders. So my recipe today really is about focusing on fresh flavors, focusing on incorporating fats, carbs, and proteins, and really just trying to utilize some ingredients. So my recipe that I made today, I'm going to make my creamer today, is the summertime grape bowl. All right, so this is something that's truly customizable, and you can use whatever vegetables you guys like and proteins you like as well. So I'm just using some of the vegetables that I prefer, and I encourage you to pick whatever works for you. So to get started today, we are going to start off. This recipe starts off with the balsamic reduction, all right? So if you look here, I know there's a ladle in it. So this is just balsamic vinegar and honey. So what you do, you put this in a little saucepan on the stove, and you cook it until it looks thick like this, all right? So that's the first part of this recipe. The second part of this recipe is actually prepping the asparagus and tomatoes. So that's what I'm going to do next. So these tomatoes and asparagus already have been washed, and same with the lemons as well. All right. So I'm going to take a big handful of asparagus. So in order to prep asparagus, all you need to do is to cut the top ends off. So you can choose to rip them if you want. I'm choosing to opt in for a knife today, just to get off the top ends. All right. So once you get the top ends off, just toss them away. Right. I'm going to put asparagus on the sheet tray. It's going to go in the oven. All right. I'm going to take a little bit more from here. So a few things about asparagus that I really like. I like that it's in season in the summer, so it's really the perfect time to try out new things. So if asparagus is something you guys have never tried out before, this can be the time to do it, especially since it's in season. Right? So now that I have a decent amount of asparagus on the sheet tray, as you see, I'm going to move on to the tomatoes. All right. So I grab a handful of grape tomatoes. So just some facts about tomatoes. They're in season in the summer as well. There are definitely a variety of tomatoes. So the reason why I'm choosing grape tomatoes for this recipe is because they really do cook quickly. And they also, in my mind, are delicious. So that's one of the reasons I always pick items is if I enjoy it. So plus it adds a little bit of color, which I always feel like is more appealing than you're eating. So that's definitely something I keep in mind when selecting ingredients. So one of the things I love to do, especially in the summer months, is actually explore farmers markets. So farmers markets are a great way to find fresh produce and to really try out new things. So one of the things that I love to do when I go to a farmer's market is really talk to the farmers and see what's really in season and what they recommend right now as their best product or produce. So I'm going to take these grape tomatoes, right? We're going to gather them and tray. Right? You see we have a nice setup here. All right. So next step, we're going to be doing the olive oil. All right. So I usually say a big drizzle. So that's usually about it. Right. So really, the olive oil is where we're getting our fat today, and it's really, in my mind, it's very delicious and one of the main oils that I use in my kitchen. All right. So next, if you see here, I have lemon zest, so I'm going to put some lemon zest on top as well. So lemon is a great pairing to both the tomatoes and the asparagus. So since we are going to be utilizing lemons later to top our grain bowls, I think utilizing the lemon zest is a great way to make sure you're using both of the products. Right? And then next is salt, pepper. So usually what I do, I eyeball. Okay? This is what I tell my clients all the time. I really believe that we should be eyeballing instead of measuring and weighing inches. And we should be honoring our hunger and fullness. Right? So one of the things you'll notice here is I love pepper. So I'm just going to add a little bit more pepper to the asparagus just because it's a personal preference. Like I said, if you don't like pepper, as much pepper, you can choose to omit it or not. So you can either toss it with your hand. I'm going to use some tongs. So what we're going to do is toss these around, get the oil coated, make sure the lemon zest and pepper are all distributed. Right. So once everything's want to get everything in a single layer if possible. It allows it to roast a little bit better. So once you have things in a single layer, what I would do then, so we are actually going to be broiling the asparagus and tomatoes. So this is very quick. So this is going into an oven on broil. We actually have ours set to about 530 degrees for about 5 to 8 minutes, guys. So I'm actually going to set it for about 5-ish minutes, and we'll see how it looks. All right, it's in, guys. So while that cooks, I do want to go over a few fun facts I have about the produce here today. So when it comes to asparagus, there are a few tips that you can utilize to make sure you're choosing the best asparagus out there. So one of the things you always want to look for is to make sure the tops of the asparagus, making sure that they're closed. That kind of ensures that it's freshest and that it's ready to be used as well. And also just making sure it looks firm, guys. Making sure it's not limp, making sure that it can stand upright. That's a pretty good indicator that asparagus is ready to go. All right. And lastly, the last thing about asparagus, as you can see here, there's some stalks these are about the same size, but there are different types of asparagus out there. So there's thicker ones and thinner ones. A lot of times it comes down to preference. So if you like the thinner ones, usually they become a little more crispier when you cook them, which is great. The other end, when they're thicker, they're a little bit chewier. So definitely benefits to both. So those are just some fun tricks if you want to check out asparagus next time. Either go to the farmer's market or the grocery store. All right, so now we're going to change to tomatoes. So one of the things that I love about tomatoes is the fact that there are so many and so many colors. So one of the things I definitely think is so beneficial in going to farmers markets, we really can see that there are a variety of kinds of tomatoes and also colors of tomatoes. So that's definitely a fun experience that you get by looking at what farmers grow. One thing I do want to mention about tomatoes when looking at them, so in order to make sure they're good, kind of making sure they're firm, not soft, that's a great tip. And also another tip I get, it might sound a little weird, but smelling it. So if a tomato is actually ripe, ready to be eaten, it should have a florally basil note to it. So that's a good tip to kind of utilize when you're selecting your tomatoes. All right. So now that we've shared a little information about tomatoes and asparagus, we have about 3 minutes left on our asparagus and tomatoes in the oven. I'm going to switch to herbs now. So we are going to be using herbs to top our gravels. So I'm going to start with basil, guys. All right. So I'm going to take some basil leaves. Personally, basil is one of my favorite herbs. I feel like it goes with a lot of stuff. It's very delicious. And I really utilize it in multiple things. So I'm actually just going to roughly chop this, guys, all right? So while I do this, I just love sharing fun facts about food and herbs. So one of the things that I love about basil, and that I actually learned about basil recently, is that there's over 50 types. So there truly are a lot of basils in the world, and it really depends on where you're located. So one of the things that I love about basil is the fact that you can grow it in your own garden. I know myself and other individuals might have herb gardens, and it's a great herb to definitely grow and to utilize in your meals to provide a little bit more flavor. All right, and now I'm going to cut up some parsley. So today we have curly parsley. There's three other types that are famous, but curly and flat leaf parsley, I would say, are the two most common that I've seen. So I'm going to chop that up too. So as you can see, we have a nice amount of parsley and we have a nice amount of basil. So one of the things I also want to go over today is our preparation of our grain and our protein. So today we chose to do tofu. Tofu is a great plant-based protein. This actually is a very simple recipe. The biggest cooking tip I can give when it comes to tofu is making sure you squeeze all the water out of it, because if the tofu is watery, it's going to be mushy and it can't crisp up. So what we did, we made sure we got all the water out of as much of the water out of the tofu as possible. Put some seasoning on it, baked in the oven for about 12 minutes. And this is the product we got. So it looks delicious. All right. And then our grain today. So today we decided to do couscous. I personally love couscous. There's multiple varieties of couscous. So this is honestly the reason why I chose couscous. It is so versatile. So it can literally, it's so customizable. So it really can take on any protein you put on, any vegetable you put on, any sort of flavor you add to it. It's just a great vessel. So that's why we chose to do that today. And as I always tell my clients that getting a variety of grains and trying new things is a great thing. And this is a way to kind of incorporate a new grain if they have not tried it. So we have about 25 seconds left on our asparagus. So I'm actually going to go take a look. Oh, it looks great, guys. Great. So as you can see, look at that. You guys can see, look. Nice and crispy. The tomatoes are blistered. Asparagus is cooked. Wish you guys could smell this. Right? So now that our vegetables are done, guys, and we've everything prepped, it's assembly time. All right. So I'm going to take a bowl. All right. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to start with the grabbing the mix. So as you can see, I'm going to take 2 scoops. So one of the things that I always tell my clients is in our program, the eyeball thing. So about 2 scoops seems like about a fistful. Good serving. Right. So now that we have the couscous down, this is usually when I add the fish. So see how delicious they look and awesome. So grab a pan, make sure you get some of those tomatoes. If you do not like your tomatoes as blistered or as hard as they are, you can definitely feel free to cut down on the time. I personally love the taste, so that's why I chose to do it. You also can choose to put these variegated tomatoes at a lower temperature for a little bit longer. But just for time, I want this to be as simple as possible. So doing the broil option is a great way to get vegetables on to your meal fast. All right. So now that the veggies are down, I'm actually going to go into the tofu. So I'm going to take, I'm going to say about a spoonful of the tofu right on top. All right. So now for the toppings, as I call it. So one of the things that we're adding today is feta cheese. The feta cheese is probably one of my favorite cheeses. I feel like we use ways, but you can use other cheeses. You also can choose a different cheese too if you don't like cheese. But I like cheese, so I'm going to be sprinkling a good little handful or two, like that, right? And also brings a little bit more color as well, which I think is more appealing to our eyes and makes us funny, right? So next, I am going to do our balsamic plate. Right, so as you can see, our balsamic production. We're going to put this right on top. I love the way balsamic production displays the taste, so I'm going to put a nice drizzle on there. All right. Last 2 things are our herbs and a little bit of lemon juice. So I'm going to take a little bit of the basil, and I'm going to take a little bit of the parsley. Last step, guys. A little bit of lemon juice. We're good. I mean, I really wish you guys could hear it. It smells amazing. And I can definitely tell you I'll be enjoying this later myself. So hopefully you guys really enjoyed listening to the demo today. And I really hope you try to explore and get creative. One of the things that I especially love in the summer is making my own recipes. This is actually a recipe I made myself. And I think it's a great way to get active in the kitchen and also to get family members involved too. So thanks again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the